So Trixie the Golden Witch, otherwise known, formerly known as Digibro on this here platform, had a big influence on me, had a big influence on the kind of content that I make and all this stuff that you're watching now. She directly contributed to my continued existence, if you know anything about the lore on this channel. And I stopped watching her content for the most part in like 2019 as the May era, you know, that schizo bitch who is fucking this like 4'9" alt-right guy now or whatever. That whore basically took over the channel, and I think a lot of the videos weren't as appealing to me. No, not because, oh, Digibro has sex now or whatever. I was never part of that camp or in that crowd. The content just didn't resonate with me as much as some of the new up-and-coming vloggers I was seeing come around at that time, namely No Thank You, who was, you know, pumping out just loads and loads of videos in a similar vein to the Digibro After Dark stuff from, you know, even just a year or 2 years prior, but especially 3 years prior, 2016, which is when I really became like a dedicated fan of this content. I was watching everything. And for those of you who don't know about this channel, like she produces, or she would produce like sometimes 7, 8, 9 hours of content in a single day. So you would have uploads coming out every single day across multiple channels with different themes or purposes behind them, and it would result in hours upon hours of content to consume. Many of them just had rehashes of like the same stories or different retellings of the same events you'd hear on those other shows, but there was enough different stuff going on with each show individually that I would just watch them all. And because in 2016, 2017, you know, I wasn't in school, I was supposed to be, but was not, I just consumed that stuff constantly. It was like, it was all I did. And I did some other stuff, namely make my own videos, plan out my own videos, and get really serious about my own YouTube stuff because I was really inspired to become good at public speaking from her content. But then things shifted as I got a little bit older, and also I got better at public speaking and her content changed. I moved on to focusing on other stuff. And in the wake of that situation, there was a big void to be filled. There's a big old gap in my time that used to be occupied by her videos on a regular basis, just all the time, headphones on, ears blasting with the voice of this one person. Oftentimes me laying in my bed, or sometimes pacing around, sitting in my chair, wherever I was at the time. It was like a lot of what I did was just listening to those videos or idly staring at the computer screen as they talked. And I feel like there's probably only like a couple hundred people who did that. Like, it's gotta be like a solid 1,000 and no more. Like, there are people who consumed that much, and then there are people who consumed maybe a little bit of each thing, but never like all of it on a regular basis. It was just too much to keep up with if you had a job or other things to do, like even just other YouTubers to watch. It was an obsessive approach to this kind of parasocial relationship that I had, and I don't think I'd say I wasted my time per se. You know, I look back on those memories fondly, And it kind of makes sense that I was doing that given the fact that I was a NEET and had very little going on. But ever since then, with the exception of some recent times, I have been a NEET with not a lot going on. And then there's no golden witch, there's no digibro. I mean, there's like these new Denpa people. Like for a while, there was that Dotes bitch making her videos, and then, you know, No Thank You still does stuff sort of, but he doesn't really do the Denpa stuff. Artificial Night Sky is still pretty cool, I guess. Who else is there? I mean, there's not a lot of people. The Donut Can Man does his whole rides on a bicycle and bees homeless hobo thing, which is like the ascended form of Denpa. This is like what every NEET is probably going to become if they don't get their shit together, but also the best case scenario version of that. Like basically doing the hobo living free thing, but in the most intelligent way that you can. That's what he does. And that's like evolved. That's like ascended Denpa. And none of these guys that I just mentioned, not even myself anymore. I mean, there was a time when I was pumping out like hours of content a day, but not anymore. None of these guys are really filling that void. Nor do I even really want them to, because to be frank with you, I'm just not interested enough in Denpa videos to be like listening to that type of stuff like 24/7. Like there's only so much you can get out of being in a room all the time and consuming stuff. Like, I want a little bit more meat to chew on than just that. It's kind of self-indulgent to just obsess over people who have a similar lifestyle to you if they can't bring something unique to the table by adding in their voice. And I feel as though all the people that I've brought up have in fact done that. But yeah, I mean, it just feels a little strange, like, to have that be the only thing that you want to listen to. It also feels like you're kind of looking at like the surface level details of what made that content good if you're only looking for like content within that style, because there were a lot of things that made that content good that weren't just the stylistic trends therein. And I've tried a couple things content wise. Like, I started getting really into like political radio, because that's something that will just play for like hours a day. I also got into podcasts of the same nature, more podcasts in general, and a lot of those, again, they just run for hours every day. And a lot of those shows will release so much that you can fill a lot of that time with individual voices who happen to be entertaining and keep things, I don't know, saucy enough to continually keep your attention. But there have been times when I've looked at all this stuff that I'm consuming, and then I've felt to myself, like, is this the same feeling? Like, am I getting the same feeling from this that I got from that content back then? Obviously not. No. I mean, we can never go back to 2016. We can never go back to 2017. We can never go back to 2018. We can never go back to 2019. And that's fine. We don't need to do that. But there's this part of me, still in there, kind of, that just looks back on all that and thinks, you know, man, times were a lot easier back then. They were a lot harder because I was incredibly poor, had no food, and was getting my electricity cut off at different points. But I was alone in a dark room listening to this entertaining stuff all the time. I could dissociate from my post-traumatic stress and bad memories and all of the awkward social situations I would get into as an autistic male. And in those moments where I was listening to that stuff, I wouldn't have as many intrusive thoughts or flashbacks as I normally would. Of course, the longer that I stayed in that state, I think the more they'd kind of ramp up. And also, that's a different story for a different day, but needless to say, I'm still dealing with the same issues where I have these horrendous nightmares a lot of nights. I have these horrendous flashbacks, like, regularly throughout the day. And sometimes they're so bad that, like, I'll just be stuck for a whole day. Like, I'll just be stuck in bed feeling like shit. And it helps now having my wife to pick me back up or help me pick myself up, but I'm just so neurotic all the time. Like, I'm just so angry and, like, stressed. I just obsess over, like, the smallest aspects of a problem sometimes. And I think that lifestyle appeals to people who are like that. People who don't want to leave their house because they don't want to have to think about the smallest interactions that they had and then go through like every minor detail of the interaction and beat themselves down over it and have to like remember it as though it's like a traumatic experience. Like I would go outside and feel like I'm getting like lowercase t traumatized every time I would go outside. I say that in the past tense because that doesn't happen as frequently now, thankfully, but it still happens to me, And it would, create this situation where like I just shut myself in my room and self-harm and think, I want to kill myself, I want to kill myself, I want to kill myself. And I never want to leave this room again. And like I still feel like that sometimes. It hasn't gone away. I've worked jobs, I go out, I've been to all kinds of places. But even when I'm on vacation, like when I was in the UK visiting No Thank You, I could get on a plane to go all the way to the UK, and yet when I was there, I struggled just to go to the grocery store to use the self-checkout line to buy something to eat. And I would do it sometimes, but not other times. Like sometimes I just got a delivery and like I would sometimes I would be so scared that I would be like, hey, could you please go down and get it for me? I'm scared to talk to this person. Like like the person who's able to get on a plane and, to be fair, feel like shit on a plane also, but then go to a place and then you're still like scared to go to shops. Like it's just this weird thing where I could make myself push through it so far that I could get to that point, and then I'd struggle and I'd still fall down and then get back up, and then I'd do it again and just push through and push through and push through. And it feels like you keep pushing through just to get to a point where you still feel like shit because you're remembering everything that just happened and you're going through it in your head and you're playing it back again and again and again, even if you're not trying to. You might be trying to ignore it, you might be trying to think of something else, and then that doesn't work, so you try to embrace it and think about it and address it and try to think about it constructively, and it just hits you again and again and again in this physical way, this purely physical way. Because it's all based on this irrational fear, this erratic mind that is so overactive that it brings out this fear at the physical level, even when there is nothing to be scared of. There is nothing to be scared of when you go to the shop. There is nothing to be scared of when you go outside. There is nothing to be scared of when you interact with friends. But that's how I felt for like my whole life. And so of course, I wanted to shut myself in my room and never talk to anybody again. And for that type of person, this type of content appeals. It's appealing. And I haven't really been able to fill that void. I've tried to supplement, the loss of time filled with time outside, and me trying to do these constructive things to better myself, instead of just living in a world of pure escapism. But it's hard. It's really hard. And I keep trying every single day. But I'll say this, I'm in a hell of a lot better of a position than I used to be. I still remember shortly after I became 18, I went to go live with a friend of mine from Discord who offered me a place, offered me help in all these different ways. I was so terrified that I almost never spoke. I was completely silent most of the time. I just didn't say anything most of the time. I would never do that now. I have conversations with strangers now, and they can't even tell that I'm nervous. I'll be physically shuddering on the inside, feeling fucking gut-wrenchingly terrified. And I'll just outwardly appear like I'm totally normal. I'll be making small talk. I'll be shooting the shit. I'll be making minor jokes. I'll be trying to keep the conversation going with strangers. And I can do the same thing with friends now too. But at that point, I literally had to drink alcohol just to go in calls on Discord. I could not go into Discord calls because I was so nervous. I was so socially anxious that I needed alcohol just to do that. And I'm not at that point anymore. I can go outside, I can talk to people, I can do things. I can do job interviews, and I can ace them. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. You need to fail a lot. I've been given so many different opportunities to fail, and I've learned from all of them. And each and every time that I've failed, I see myself getting better. And I've seen how I've gotten better. And so, it keeps happening. It's gonna keep happening. But that's a good thing. It's a good thing that I can go outside and feel like shit and feel like my fucking head is pounding and like there's no way out and I just want to cry and scream and break stuff. It's good that I'm feeling that way because at least I'm outside. At least I'm exposing myself to this world. And what do you know? You give it a couple days, it doesn't hurt anywhere near as much. You go on with your time. You try again. And you get better bit by bit. I won't say I don't still feel hopeless sometimes, even a lot of the time. When you experience social interaction and your memories of them and your memories of things in general in this intense fashion, it's easy to feel like the logical answer is to give up. But I've seen myself change. Bless you, by the way. But I've seen myself change. And you can change too. I can continue changing. I just have to give myself a chance. And this was supposed to be a video about escapism and this quest that I had to fill the void left by the digital brother, now known as Trixie the Golden Witch. But I don't even think I'm on that quest anymore. I think I've been off that quest for a little bit now. Now I'm just doing me. And that's pretty fucking hard to do. But the idea is you do it long enough, and eventually you're fine with it.